What is up, Fantasyland? If you've been drafting this past offseason in any of the FFPC big money leagues, chasing that $1 million, chasing that big money, we're going into the playoff weeks, guys. We're done. Week 12 is over. Tonight, we dive deep into the data. Where are the win rates? Where are the super stacks? What are we going to do next year? Stay tuned, guys. Let's get to it.
Go DiSTRiCT, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT DiSTRiCT, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? Welcome back to the Go DiSTRiCT for another monster show back-to-back this week. We're fresh off of our high-stakes roundtable last night with Glenn Lowy, Adam Krauswurst. Amazing show, deep dive. What did we not talk about, Dan, last night? We hit like all kinds of topics.
Yeah, I mean, it was all over the map, and we got it. We got it all. But we left some good stuff for our guest tonight, so we're going to be hitting some even better stuff.
For sure. And if you haven't been checking out the roundtables, guys, this is our fourth one. These are invaluable information. The guests are monsters. Make sure you check them out. And tonight is no difference. We have this man on. We try to get him on this time of year after week 12. Regular season is over in the big money tournaments. So now we want to deep dive with this man. You know him as Fantasy MOJO, Darren Armani, and funny enough, creator of the Pros versus Joes drafts on the FFPC, and a title holder himself in a few high-stakes leagues. Darren, welcome back to the DiSTRiCT, brother.
High-stakes bros in the house. This is how we do it. Yo, Pros versus Joes, you guys are in first place in your league. I was checking out the leaderboard today.
Yeah, our league is kind of tightening up, but we're grimly hanging on to first place. So
yeah, you got a slim lead, but see if you can hang on.
Yeah, exactly.
You were one of the few teams to take Pacheco. That was like in the middle of July.
Yeah,
that was late July, but yeah, not a lot of people even took him, so that could help you down the stretch.
Yeah, that was one of those that like a week or like even 10 days later, all of a sudden everybody was all over Pacheco.
Yeah,
and we had just kind of he was on our list of around 20, just basically scratch off lottery tickets, and he was the one we settled on.
Right.
And Hassan Haskins, right? Isn't he going to be a league winner for us too in that league?
Down the stretch.
I mean, anything could happen.
Playoff performer Hassan Haskins.
That's right.
You guys got the dynasty mindset that helps you in those early leagues.
Well, we combined like Voltron on that one. We had all four of us, I think, on that draft. Dan gets invited, and we just ride the coattails, man. That's how we do it.
Everybody hops on.
Shout out to the chat. You guys are awesome. You guys are always awesome. Last night was super lit. Get the questions in. We've got some questions, obviously, some topics we want to hit with Darren. Darren always brings his own topics, but if you guys have any questions, guys, make sure you lay them out in the chat. Smash the subscribe if you're new to the channel, and smash the like. Help us out, guys. Go ahead, Dan.
I got to say it. Darren, the show that you did with us earlier this season, where we were talking about bids and how to bid and everything else, that was gold.
Yeah, Dan's been gloating about this all season.
I have been,
especially on Thursdays.
Yep, these guys are getting tired of hearing about me, Yeah, I won that bid 23 to 22 or 34 to 33 or 112 to 111. Using all those little tricks. So
There's definitely psychology to it, and
absolutely.
I'm going to look back to see when that was. You guys, if you haven't heard that episode, it's kind of like evergreen information just based on bidding and attacking the waiver wires twice a week in the FFPC and in the high stakes realms. Let's jump into it tonight, Darren. I'll let you start off where you want to start off. I know you sent us some awesome spreadsheets, some great information. Unless you want to go macro, why don't we start macro and then you start off where you want? Is there one big observation that kind of stands out this year? Maybe that's a little different than the previous years with what you've seen so far?
I think the fortunes of most teams has been basically on how you drafted. There hasn't been much you could have done in waivers. If you didn't draft well, I mean, the success or failure of your team is pretty much coming from the draft. Maybe the biggest waiver wire pickup was a couple of weeks ago when Christian Watson, people finally picked him up and they spent some money on him, and he's paid off. More than 1 week. There's been a couple 1 week wonders, that got you by, but that guy seems to have some staying power, and it's amazing he keeps doing it every week. It's just really like you had to draft well. And then now that we're in on the precipice of the championship rounds for the FFPC. I've been diving into the data, looking at the teams, and you can kind of see what the profiles, what the makeups are of the teams that succeeded. And it's really like in prior years, I didn't see much zero RB, but there are definitely a lot more zero RB teams up there. And it could also be a function of more people did it. That seems to gain steam, and every year you get more and more teams drafting zero RB, so that might have something to do with it. But again, it depends on the format too. And then when I was looking at the best ball leaderboards in the FFPC best ball tourney, if you go to the website, we've got the leaderboards there for all of the best ball tourneys for FFPC. So you can go to the leaderboard and you can click on the names of the teams and then go to the draft board. Every team at the top of the best ball tourney, they got Travis Kelce in the first round. It's just that just totally dominated the best ball landscape. But those are kind of the two biggest things that I've kind of noticed. After the season's over, we really dive into things, but those are the things that really just stand out right now.
Guys, you see the website in the little banner below fantasymojo.com. If you're not subscribed to that site, it's a no-brainer. Even if you don't play FFPC, which shame on you, and click on the link below, which I'll add after. But even if you don't, you get to see all the draft boards, you get to see all the ADP, all this information we're going to talk about tonight is available on there. So you get to see how the best players in the world are drafting and building rosters, and what's winning these tournaments, right, Darren?
Yeah, it's important during draft season, but even during the season, the waiver wire data that we have, because you've got the hive mind of the high stakes people, running the waivers and then seeing who they picked up. You can go, to the ads for any given week. And I'm speaking to more home league players or the infamous Yahoo leagues where everybody's always available. Yeah. But you can see what are the sleepers that the high stakes players are targeting. And even sometimes I'm surprised. I'll wake up, run the numbers, and then I'll see everybody picked up JaMychal Hasty, just out of blue, but he's at the top of the list. So if you're a casual player, that's somebody you should probably pick up in your home league, because these are the smartest players on the planet, going after these deep sleepers. So it's not only helpful to the high stakes players, but really more casual players too.
Theo is all over that guy. Check out the OG Livewire, man. The waiver wire show every week. He dropped that name a couple weeks ago, and if you listen, you'd already have him. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is with the high stakes leagues that we're playing in here, we have a 20-man roster, and a lot of home leagues have 16, 17-man rosters. And that's what makes those guys available in those leagues. So even if you don't necessarily have room to jam them onto your roster, it's good to just kind of have a watch list, sitting kind of by your computer or whatever, and be continuously adding to it or taking guys off as they don't work out or whatever. But that's a great way to even buff just that last roster spot or two, which is something that all of us in the high stakes world are very, very used to. I mean, you've got 20 roster spots, and you can't let any single one of them go to waste.
So everybody loves talking zero RB, right? And you mentioned, Darren, that you're seeing a lot more of these rosters advance. This is a question from myself, not on the show sheet. We'll get into the actual question, but do you think maybe it could be, because just looking at the community, I know zero RB is a very popular approach. The guys that put in big volume, could it be that this same people are putting in more rosters that have that approach, or is this based on actual individual players?
Well, I think it's a combination of the two, because it's not just, a casual player doing zero RB. You got smart people that are like applying that strategy, and you'll see even, there are the zealots who that's all they'll do is zero RB, and there's other ones.
Andrew, do you know who they might be? No, I'm joking.
No, I don't even think Darren's talking about me. I'm not a full zealot.
I'm not talking about you.
And then you got other guys who mix it up, and they'll intentionally do different, draft strategies. And I think even, like, for instance, even Hubbard does that once in a while. He'll do zero RB just because he's got so many teams. Not only is he diversifying his portfolio, he's diversifying his draft strategies as well. But definitely, when I run the numbers, I'm very confident I'm going to see, like, there's going to be 20% more zero RB teams that were drafted this year, just because it's like a phenomenon that, like, everybody's sort of gravitating to. Now, whether or not they end up, and I tweeted today, like, the number one team in both the main event and the Football Guys tourney, they're zero RB teams, currently in first place. Now they got to get through the sprint and actually take it down. But I think you guys had somebody on in the NFFC last year who won. With a zero RB. So, I mean, more people are picking up on it, and, like, people are potentially going to win with it. So,
yeah, Billy had a zero RB squad. So,
what's Crystal Ball Mojo? Also not show sheets, to putting you on the spot, so I'll vamp a little bit here. You've got a great attitude when it comes to, like, interacting with everyone, and I think you even hashtag high stakes broad. When doing the podcast, but so I think that you've actually got a good pulse on all this. What does your crystal ball say with how much zero RB we're going to see next year? Forget this year. What about next year? Do you think that there's going to be more than we already had this year once you run the final numbers? What is that going to look like as we think about what the zeitgeist will be like shortly here, and when drafts kick off again in 2 months in January, February?
I mean, there'll probably be more of it, but how much more is going to, because of recency bias and how people tend to draft based upon what worked the prior year. I mean, if a zero RB team wins this year, forget about it. It's just going to be zero RB. Like, it's going to be like all yellow, like the first 5 rounds, because everybody's going to be doing it.
The Z-Bros, as we maybe call them.
Oh, the T-shirt idea.
Zebra.
No, I got one. I just thought of one. You know, what's the Calvin and Hobbes where he's like peeing?
Yeah.
You just do that on a draft board, and it's like the zero RB approach.
Yeah.
Don't be stealing my ideas out there, guys. We got our intern on it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's being heavily adopted anyway, just because that's sort of the religion that's gaining traction. But yeah, there'll be more of it. But you can't always just have groupthink. You got to do, like, don't follow the crowd all the time. Just I like to, I don't have any biases against anybody in their draft strategy. There's people who, like, they're going to come after you if you, like, say something negative about it. But just,
Well, that's what I'm saying. You've got a great attitude about it. I think that you're able to do a good job playing both sides of the zero RB joke when you need to. So credit to you for having a good sense of humor about the all the data that you're seeing.
Right. Ultimately, it comes down to drafting the best players, which is cliche, but, like, Cooper Kupp. Like, I drafted some nice, like, heavy wide receiver teams. There wasn't zero RB, but now I'm screwed because I went like out in Vegas. I drafted Cooper Kupp first in one league, and now
Sure.
that team is hosed. But that could have worked out. So maybe it's not the results of how that team finished, but it could have played out that way. It's just there's a lot of guys. The old adage that wide receivers don't get hurt. Well, they're getting hurt. Kupp got hurt. Chase got hurt. They're not invincible like some people advertise them to be. So they get hurt just as often as running backs now, it seems. So we'll see.
Yeah, one of the things I know that Andrew and I have discussed a little bit, and I think JD has probably been in on some of that too. Andrew and I are like, well, we didn't have the greatest results this year, but we also learned nothing. Because we
I did say that. I'm willing to talk about this. You go, Dan, but I want to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point where you have to say, I think my process was good, but injuries or whatever can grind out even the best teams. I mean, just sometimes you literally pick the wrong players, even though you kind of had the right idea. So there's always a little bit of a give and take between, do I have the right strategy and do I have the right players? Whereas, you can also kind of stand that on its head, and you could say, well, if you pick the right players, you can win with any strategy. So I think the main thing that I've kind of taken away, I kind of took it away last year, but I don't think I did enough of it this year that I want to do more of next year, is be varying my strategies a little bit more to gain exposures to some players that I was just kind of like, in a particular strategy I might automatically pass on. Whether you want to, like, for example, I would be generally passing on some of the receivers that were available in rounds 9 through 12 because I was always going quarterback or tight end or wide receiver there, running back there, and so I just wasn't getting some of those wide receivers, and there were some good wide receivers available in that range that I would have liked to have had some exposure to. But why don't you piggyback on that, Andrew? Whatever you have on top of there.
Well, I want to learn lessons, and what's interesting is I actually thought I learned a ton of lessons from last year and spun those forward. Pre seeing the results being not as I would have wanted this year, I thought I took lessons from last year and really like artfully moved them forward. I think that I was more thoughtful about when to come off of the wide receivers, when to go after running backs. And I think that we touched like Breece Hall, Swift, ETN. Give me another one. We were on Ken Walker, like
Elijah Moore.
We AJ Dillon. I think
Rondale.
Of those, he was probably the worst. But like I thought that like I had going into this year really kind of understood the pivot spots. And Dan, I think it all came down to great process, bad players. So my question then is, and why because I've been questioning myself, is like, is this the right lesson to learn? Is that there's no lessons to be learned? Like, am I just bad at picking players, or did I like not get the strategy right? And I've been wrestling with that because I want to come away with the season that I didn't do great at. I think I've got some just fine pass throughs, some good sweeps, and some mains, but not the smash when we were texting each other, this team fucks, after every single draft that we did in Vegas. So I look at those drafts.
We were only off by one letter.
Yeah. TTS instead of TTF. We gotta get the T-shirt in turn. Gotta get some question marks there. But I want to learn a lesson from the season. So I guess maybe that's more of an existential question. Going back to you, Dan, of just like I wonder if it's hey, yeah, maybe you had good process if the season broke that way. The problem was the season didn't break that way, so I should have been more open to other strategies, even if like the one path I opened myself up to was sound, and just didn't follow that path. So anyways, that's the kind of existential stuff I've been wrestling with here, just trying to figure out what's the right lessons for me to learn based on the draft boards that I loved before seeing kind of how they ended up.
The people who seem to be most bitter
Yeah.
are the ones who got caught up in something and then have remorse. Like, oh my God, the whole philosophy of hard fading players.
Yeah.
Well, if you fade wrong, like I saw a list that had faded Nick Chubb and Josh Jacobs. Like you don't. Then you see like on Twitter people like pointing fingers. Well, this analyst told me to do this. Like, dude, you like it's on you. You're the one who ultimately has to make the
You click the button. You click the button and yell the name. Yeah.
Have some accountability. You put your money down, pick the players you like. Like it's good to like use that other information as input, but don't blindly follow somebody. Especially other thing is you got make sure you're like looking at a person's track record. Don't listen to the guy who has the loudest voice in the room. Listen to the people who have proven track records. And then if you do sort of heavily weight your decisions based upon somebody's advice, well, they say, well, you know, the guy's right 8 times out of 10 or something. So, but you got to be your own person.
I think Dan nailed it. I think you have to treat your roster builds the same way you do your player ownership. So if you're really big on 0 RB, maybe that's a big percentage of your portfolio. But then you have to throw in some aggressive, you know, RB builds or whatever it is that you got to mix in there, like Dan said, in order to hit the different points. Because what happens is 2 years ago or last year, Dan, I had a lot of success in a lot of different leagues because I did that. And I think that if you just pay attention to, okay, those teams, what did I do in those teams? And, you know, for whatever reason that year, the 0 RB teams are the ones that do well. Then you go into the next season and you're doing all 0 RB or most of it. And then we're all feeding off each other, you know, pissing yellow. Andrew's giving us shit every time we want to draft an RB. So you kind of come into this season, right? And then, like you said, Dan, we have less of the variety of those builds. I haven't looked, like, I'm curious to see how my best balls end up, like results wise at the end of the season. But I think that, like you said, I think that's a big part of it is now I think we have to treat our builds the same way we do our player ownership. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of it just kind of comes down to overconfidence and being able to predict what's going to happen during the season.
And recency bias.
Yeah. You know, because and this is one of the reasons why you don't see me throwing out a lot of draft boards in the preseason, you know, across the summer, things like that, because to me, there's a little bit too much of, the echo chamber going on. You know, you keep hearing the same things from Twitter, and you can, you know, I can pretty much tell you after every draft whether Twitter's going to love it or hate it, or, you know, what they're going to find wrong with it and everything else. And, you know, so I don't typically start doing that until, you know, we're kind of on the last drafts of the year. And then it's like, you know, hey, I'm at the point where I don't care what Twitter thinks anymore. I'm just, you know, I'm drafting what I'm drafting. So those last 3 weeks or so I'll do it. But in the early part of the summer, I don't want to do that because I'm afraid it's going to, I might start listening to the feedback a little bit too much, if that makes sense. What do you think about that, Darren?
Maybe sometimes it's better to stay off social media.
Actually, isn't it Schroeder that one of the top guns comes on here and he's like, yeah, I don't look at anything till like, you know, whatever he's July, August.
I mean, the guy always amazes me. Like he's a value drafter. He doesn't really, he seems like he's on there a little bit more, but he's not really paying attention to it as much. So Pros versus Joes is the perfect example. That was his first draft of the year. So he got like the 6th pick. He came in there cold, and he just did value drafting. And he drafted Travis Kelce in the first round. And then I'm guilty because I'm down I think I was at the 11th spot. And then I let Mark Andrews get back to him. So he just took Mark Andrews. And then he followed up with like Tyreek and all these guys. And now he's first overall in the Pros versus Joes, just drafting cold, just doing value, doing what he always does, not having listened to anybody. It wasn't influenced by any of the, you know, the speak all summer long. So there's sometimes, you know, but if you're kind of like in the fantasy space as a content creator, whatever, you can't really sort of remove yourself from it either. But you can see, and there's a lot of high stakes players. You go out to Vegas, like a lot of those guys, they don't even know what Twitter is, you know, and they're just, a lot of them are just as successful as everyone else. So I don't know.
I think Dan, you've said in the past that there's an inverse relationship to the Twitter love and how well the team performs. If they hate it, the
pretty
team will
much.
be great. If they love it, the team will be terrible.
Yeah,
By the way, I love posting boards, so I'm the opposite. I love posting boards because I'm like the Elmo on fire. I just like love having the chaos rain down and hope that I get roasted beyond belief whenever I post one.
Well,
so I'm all in.
I do it too. I do it too.
in.
But I even for a while I even asked you guys because I was putting it out without the names and without even saying which one it was my team. Is just because I know people love looking at draft boards. Especially in the off season, we're all obsessed with draft boards. It's the builds, the different builds, especially the one-offs. We all you see 3 tight ends go off in the first 5 rounds. We're like, ooh, look at number 11. Like there's the rake. But it's more for fun. It's not really like, hey, I just drafted the greatest team.
Yeah. It does influence people, though. I mean, they'll see that stuff and they'll be like, oh my God, that looks great. I want to do that too. And
true.
It's just how it works. And that's why Josh Jacobs was like a piece of garbage to everybody, because it was like, oh, he sucks. So nobody's drafting him. And then if you look, like his ADP actually got lower and lower. Like I tweeted today, like people were running away from him. Like the closer he got to the season, the less people wanted him. And then
he was kind of the Leonard Fournette, of this year. In 2021, Leonard Fournette was that guy. James Conner was that guy.
Yep.
That you could get like in the 8th, 9th round, and Josh Jacobs was pretty close to that range in FFPC.
Yeah, and then like the lesser the draft capital for a guy like that, the higher their odds are that he's going to win your leagues. Like with hardly having to do anything else because you're getting him so late. You're right. Fournette was that guy last year, and it looks like Josh Jacobs, at least his best ball. Because God knows what could happen. Like he could get hurt. So I tweeted 46% of the teams and football guys who drafted Josh Jacobs, like they already clinched into the championship round. Now, the downside of that is if he gets hurt or something, then you got that many teams that are like screwed, and then they're going to be eliminated. So nobody's won anything, but you got to get to the dance to like have a chance to begin with. So, and he was the highest. He has the highest advance rate, I call it, of the players.
And you got to get to the dance, obviously, Darren, too. But then I guess, you mentioned the downside of him getting hurt. But then, there's also the potential downside. Now, look, you're in the dance. So that's good. Great, even. You've got to differentiate in other ways, too. So, there could be pros and cons. But obviously, getting to the dance is huge. I would say, and you guys talked about it yesterday. I wasn't on the pod with the round table. But I would say that, like, go back to lessons learned and process, like that there was news that was progressively signs that are traditionally not good for the running back. Him playing full preseason games, him having his 5th-year option declined, like the Zamir White, like again, maybe that started the downward trend. Not a big indicator in like April, May, but as the summer went on, I think that there were reasonable indicators where if you were just going off of pure odds bets, that would have told you, okay, his ADP should be lower. Now, yeah, there should be exposures to that, no doubt about that. I don't have to worry about that. But like, I think that like that fade was reasonable. If you're doing 1 draft, 2 drafts, 3 drafts, you could easily understand like 0%, Josh Jacobs, obviously. So I don't think it was necessarily like, again, bad process. I just think it was, if you were a full fade and you did, 100 teams, I think that, you're definitely kicking yourself that you're not one of the 48 or 46% that are auto qualified.
But you have to know like where the tipping point is, and then that's why you have to be in touch with the ADP, where teams are, because like it's within the realm of possibility that he was starting running back, and like it was an outcome that he could
absolutely
overcome that. So like, where do you pull the trigger? So like completely fading him was probably not the thing to do. It's like, even though it felt uncomfortable, you probably should have just grabbed a few shares here and there, just to kind of cover yourself, just in case. So,
no, agreed.
Guys, we've got 9 likes, and you got 19 of you watching. So we'll answer some questions as soon as the likes get us over 12 at least. Come on, guys, smash the like, helps the show, helps us out. We're bringing you all this goodness. in the meantime, so let's get away from the zero RB real quick, just to end it off, Darren. Give us an idea before we get into your spreadsheets. I really want to get into them. Success wise, like success rates, zero RBs. What is some detail that you might have for us?
I took a look at just the top 10 teams that have made it to the football guys in the main event, and there was actually three zero RB teams in each of those. So I didn't scan. The field's not completely filled out yet because more teams are going to be added to the field based upon. So the way it works is right now you got 2 teams out of every league are already in the championship round, so that's 16%. And traditionally that'll bump up to 20% overall because somebody who didn't finish first or second wins the league championship, and then they'll get in there. So there could be more in there, and I'll do a deeper dive at that point. But I think it's going to be there's going to be a lot of more zero RB teams, but I think it's proportional to just more teams were doing that. That used to be Sean's things, oh well, it's not winning because not that many people have done it. So he's kind of right. It's kind of proportional to the number of people implementing that strategy. So we'll see.
Guys, if you're not part of this community already, smash subscribe just to show you guys how awesome these guys are. We're at 15 likes, and that was 2 minutes. So you guys are awesome. We appreciate you. Let's get to some questions, guys, really quick before we keep getting into we get into the spreadsheets. Ruckus wants to know half PPR Pickens or Burks this week. Do quick around the table here, Darren.
I don't know. I kind of like what Burks has been doing. He's trending upward. Pickens, there's a lot of mouths to feed there. I don't think I don't have a high level of confidence. I kind of like Burks as more of the upside play there.
Theo, Andrew? Theo.
Yeah, I sent in the chat. I like Burks too. Hate to say more opportunity, but he's obviously on the field a ton. Effort plays are going to help him, like the one, his first career NFL touchdown this past week. I like what I see out of him. I think I heard Theo say he's an auto 15-point score for the rest of the season, which I forgot to text Theo about earlier today to say that was quite the number. But I'm in on Burks this week over Pickens.
Dan?
Yeah, same. I think Burks just has a better ceiling. Pickens is getting more targets every week, but Burks is really getting the quality targets.
Give me the dog. Pickens, 85% snap share versus 55% snap share last week. I'll take the Steeler, especially with the long bombs. He's producing nicely. Let's start with the spreadsheets, and I'll pick out some questions from the chat. Keep them coming, guys. Darren, why don't you take us into these stacks? We love talking stats here. Hashtag always be stacking in the district. Why don't you talk to us about the stats? I'll get the spreadsheet up on the screen.
Okay, so there's basically 2 areas of data that I sort of dove into in the championship rounds. So there's player ownership. How many teams is a given player across the set of teams in the championship round. And then I dove into stacks to see what are the most common stacks, because what we've seen, like last year, it was Burrow and Chase. That was the stack that sort of put people over the top. So if this spreadsheet, it's looking that right now there's 2,400 some odd teams clinched the championship round. The most common stack at the top is Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. So that's cool, but what a lot of the high stakes players like to see is they like to have maybe a lesser owned stack that can maybe really take off. So if you go down towards the bottom here, one that kind of stood out to me was Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. And I think there's only right now 14 of those, or 14 or 18. Keep going. Yeah, so which is probably because
looks like there's Dak and
that's Dak and Schultz. There it is. Oh no, that's Gallup.
Now go down.
Dak and CD 14.
Oh, it's 14. Okay.
Yep.
There we go.
Yeah, Dak and CD. So you've got like, and a lot of these are the guys that were injured, you know. So Dak, there's not that many teams because Dak was out so long, and maybe a lot of those teams like didn't make it to the
Didn't
sprint.
survive.
But there are some that slid through, and Dallas has a really nice schedule, in my opinion, in the sprint. So that one's that could pay off. Keenan Allen was hurt, like maybe him and Justin Herbert like go off. That's really low owned too.
Darren, I like those ones with Kyler Murray. I think it's a little bit more, but like Kyler and Hollywood, I thought was interesting. I can't remember where I saw that one. Maybe that
It's one. It was one of the top ones.
Oh,
there it is.
Harris,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
50 of
50 of
those, so that's kind of mid range.
Yeah.
But if you go over to, and after the show's over, I put together the Stack Explorer for the championship round. So what you'll be able to do is basically, this is just, you know, common quarterback receiver stacks that are in there. You can actually go in and look for any combination of any player. So if you want to see who's got Jefferson, Tyreek, somebody else, you know, you can do that and see how many teams in the tournament have those guys. So head over to the site after the show. I'm gonna make that stuff available, and then the ownerships, the individual player ownerships will be up too. So, you got like Deshaun Watson is in here too, like some of the lower owned stacks. So people who held on to him, hoping, you know, that he would pay off once they got to the the sprint, they could possibly be in good shape depending on what he does.
Especially with Donovan People-Jones kind of popping recently, and
Right.
you would think that would progressively increase with Watson coming in.
Yep.
And Joku also having a great season.
Justin Fields, Darnell Mooney's probably sunk. But it's funny. I drafted Justin Fields.
Those are all Dan's rosters. Those 21 rosters.
Are you the guy who keeps drafting Justin Fields?
Oh no, his would
I
be
may
with
have drafted
Komet.
a little bit of Justin Fields.
Would have been with Komet, they did.
Yeah, it would have been with Komet for sure.
Yeah.
Though I had a decent amount of Mooney as well, but
Yeah, I think we all did.
Yeah, sometimes
one thing I noticed is, especially with the higher owned builds, it's really concentrated around a few quarterbacks, which is telling you that in certain cases, I think the quarterbacks are almost dragging the stack up. Though obviously the most owned ones are also have a really great receiver along with them, But when you're looking at Patrick Mahomes and Sky Moore as 55 stacks, we know who is doing the heavy lifting there. Patrick Mahomes and MVS, 51.
Right, but you don't know. The thing is, like, you don't know which of these guys. Like, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes and somebody like that. Who's that somebody going to be?
Right.
And in Kansas City, like, beyond Travis Kelce, like, it could really be anybody. So who knows?
And Darren, the way I'm looking at the spreadsheet, could this spreadsheet have duplicates in it? Like, could somebody have Mahomes, Kelce, and Sky Moore as an example?
Well, I only went with the one player, but so then if you go over to the website, when you look at that Stack Explorer, then you can put in all three of those guys and see how many they have. I only went too deep on these ones.
Nice. No, that's great. Yeah. No, I just meant, like, if somebody had those three, would they count in the Kelce?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
they would show up in both here. Yeah.
I got it. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Yeah,
Justin Jefferson was real low too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just noticed that.
Yeah.
28.
Which I thought was surprising.
Somebody in the chat mentioned Lamar Andrews stack is going to be really interesting at 30.
Yeah, that's pretty low.
See,
they were on
like
early
Cousins
season.
was dragging down the Jefferson numbers. You know what I mean? Like if people were taking Justin Jefferson early in the draft, and saying, well, I'm gonna stack him with Kirk Cousins, they may have passed up on better quarterbacks. They may have passed up on Mahomes. They may have Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, all those guys, and then they end up with they're doing like Cousins and who knows else, Cousins and Trevor Lawrence or Cousins and Aaron Rodgers or something like that, and it ends up not working out so well because they're predisposed to kind of try to make that stack, and so they're passing up on too many good quarterbacks.
Right. Yeah, and you could have had Kirk Cousins like 100% of the time if you drafted Jefferson. It's just a matter of
right.
did you wait? Like, he probably wasn't your first quarterback.
But he might have been for some of them,
Yeah, if you waited late enough. So
Yep.
depends what your strategy was. But we'll see. I mean, this is getting, the money round. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So do you have somewhere like I'd just be interested, like just how many teams had Mahomes but not Kelsey, and how many teams had Kelsey but not Mahomes type thing. Like which one was more common, the Kelsey without Mahomes or Mahomes without Kelsey? That would be kind of an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, that would be a consulting gig that I'd have to like dive into the data and like
All right, gotcha.
do some exception handling on that and see what was up with that one. Sometimes people ask me like, dude, like, can you tell me this? I'm like, yeah, I could tell you, but it'd take me like 3 hours to run that. And like, I just,
Yeah, not worth
it'd be
it.
cool to know too. But usually when I do things, it's like, it has to have like mass appeal to like make it worth my while to do that stuff, unless I had like a concierge service that I could do these special requests, but don't always have that time.
Yeah.
Let's throw in a quick question from the chat. I think this is interested. We talked about the Bears. What do you think happens with Mooney gone? Dan, I'll go to you first, just because I know this is an offense that you believed would do all of us, we all believe. But I'm curious to know your thoughts on Claypool going to Chicago, but now with Mooney gone, do you think he maybe becomes more significant in this offense? What do you get last, like 2-3 receptions, I think, last game? So I think he'd get more involved, no?
I'm guessing he'll probably get somewhat more involved, but I mean, basically what it's kind of come down to in Chicago is that it's, Fields is the guy you've got to have, and really none of the receivers matter, other than maybe Kmet has been kind of mattering of late, because the tight end position is so gross. That if you could do anything at all, then you matter at tight end. But it's more about, just the fact that, there's just not that many good tight ends right this year. And, so a guy like Kelsey can matter a little bit, or Kmet can matter a little bit more. But, Justin Fields is one of those quarterbacks I wouldn't mind having naked, as far as like, I don't necessarily need to stack him with anybody, as it turns out. I was thinking that Mooney, going into the season, I thought Mooney or Kmet was probably going to be the right stacks. And, if I could do all three as kind of a low-owned stack, have another stack, like maybe you can stack Mahomes and Juju, and then come back with a Mahomes with a Fields, Kmet, and Mooney stack as well. Then you might have something going there. But as it turns out, the passing game in Chicago just doesn't matter.
The price was nice though, and if Fields hit earlier, who knows, right? Maybe those other pieces do evolve around him, and maybe we're at a different place now. Darren, anything different in Chicago before we get into your other spreadsheet?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what your team looks like. They're going to start Claypool. He got 5 targets last week.
By Mageddon coming next week, Darren.
Yeah, I mean,
part 2.
Yeah, but he's one of them, right?
One of them.
Oh, that's true. That's right. They have 14. Oh, I totally forgot about it. Yeah. Drop all your Bears.
Maybe if you got him on some best ball teams, like you might just sort of fall into some success. But starting that guy like this time of year, you're probably in trouble to begin with if you got to start him.
All right, let's get into the individual players, Darren. The second part of your spreadsheet that you sent us. Give us your thoughts, observations this year with the individual players.
All right. So what did we have on that one?
There it is.
Yeah. So this is what I was talking about. This is where we had Josh Jacobs hitting 46. So the column at the end is probably the one that's most interesting. That's the advance rate. This is telling you if a person drafted this player, what percentage of those teams are in the sprint. So Josh Jacobs was the highest. So let's go to top 5. These are the guys that you should have drafted this year to have success. Josh Jacobs, Travis Kelce, Nick Chubb, Justin Jefferson, and Dallas Goedert. I'm
disgusted by the Goddard one, Darren.
Yeah, number 5.
I was hoping there'd be less teams with the Goddard in.
Yeah, the fifth, and this is like, I guess they already secured it, but he's not going to help you during. But they're guaranteed spots in the sprint, so it doesn't matter. Goddard's going to come back in week 15. So you'll be in good shape. It probably would have been higher if you hadn't gotten hurt.
Is Travis Kelce not here every year, Darren?
I don't know what it looked like last year, but yeah, I mean, when is he not like that? It's like so easy. It's like we should have just drafted Travis Kelce. We said that every year. Now next year we probably all draft Travis Kelce like he's in the top 5, and then that'll probably be the year it finally comes to fruition that like he falls off the cliff. We've just been waiting for it to happen, but he could still fall off the cliff and still be tight end 1, given the gap that he is over the tight end 2. So, but then if you go to the bottom, now these are the guys like that people are interested in. Like who are the studs, the perceived studs that are low owned in the tournament. So Najee Harris is only 5% owned, I'm sorry, 2.5% owned in the tournament. The second to the last column, 5% is the advance rate, but only 2.5% of the teams have Najee Harris. And then DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor. So these are the guys who, if they pop, you've got an advantage over the field because very few teams have them. These are basically the guys who disappointed. But then if they explode in the sprint, then you're sitting pretty because you're not competing against them.
Yeah, we just saw AJD put up 20 some points. We just, JT's coming back. Waller's dead and out, but
and Dylan's always a guy who pours it on at the when it gets cold that they go to him and. So that wouldn't surprise. Jamar Chase was hurt. DJ Moore stunk, and now he's got Darnold back, so maybe things are looking better for him. ETN is another one. So
looking injured now, though.
Yeah, it looks like he might play. He had a limited practice today, so there's at least some hope for him.
Yeah, I can't get a hold of that situation. Like if he why. It wasn't like they had the game in hand when they decided not to put him back in.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, like if it was like the late third quarter or something, then I could see that. But to just say, we don't need you when you don't know what's going to happen in the game, that seems very, very strange to me.
What if running backs don't matter? No.
Then I would have to buy the T-shirt that says "running backs don't matter" and then wear that, and then Team Yellow will come after me.
Yeah,
you're not getting into the sizzler like that, Andrew.
Nah. They're gonna gang up on you. They're not gonna let you sit down. It'll be like in the prison where you're not welcome at any table. You have to just sit by yourself.
Yeah.
So all this data, I'll post it up with the website. It'll be more interesting to people in a couple of weeks when they're actually deep in it. We got some work to do here over the next couple of weeks to get to the league playoffs. So, but we've got a glimpse into what's going to happen.
Let's look at waiver wire. Darren, you talked about waiver wire and how this site can help. Let's dive into it a bit. What are some of the biggest wins on the wire this year?
I'm trying to think. I don't have a top.
One of them you talked about was Christian Watson,
Christian Watson was one that paid off late, and I think to me it's more when I think waiver wire this year. I think it's what is a player's philosophy? Are you the type of guy who spend it all early trying to catch lightning in a bottle with somebody, and then you've got the other people, and I'm more of the mindset where I'll kind of just save it till the end so that if I do make the playoffs, I get the hammer and I can control the waiver wire. But there really wasn't anybody in the first, 12 weeks that was the league winner that you hope to see when you are a fab burner. Watson was probably the closest one, but that was later in the season, so a lot of guys probably got shut out because they had burned all their fab by the time that opportunity arose. Other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anybody else.
And interestingly, I mean, Christian Watson was almost 100% drafted, wasn't he? In in the startup drafts, wasn't he pretty much 100% taken, at least in the main events, the last week or whatever?
Well, he should have been drafted in all of them.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, because his ADP was like round 14 or something like that.
Right.
I think.
Well, when did Rodgers sign his? Didn't he sign 3 years? No, or am I getting my years mixed up right now?
Well, he did sign earlier this year, but that didn't. I mean,
That's
I don't really
not
think
what
that
happened.
had any effect on.
It was really Dobbs' steam. So I don't know about 100% drafted because I know there was the Dobbs steam that happened.
Well, it looks okay. So Watson on the last 2 days of the main event, looks like the latest he went was 18-10.
Could have also been just people thinking free agency or they'd
Well,
sign someone.
Watson was heavily dropped during the season, so I'm looking at week 7 drops. 139 people dropped Christian Watson in football.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with that. Is that sometimes, the best ad you can make is the drop you don't make.
Mm-hmm.
To a certain extent, like if you believe in the talent, it sometimes it hurts to hold through those hammy injuries or whatever, and it feels like this guy's never going to contribute. But when he does, man.
Look at Rashad White, right? If you held on to him, he's paying off nicely right now.
Right, exactly. I mean, think about the people who dropped Watson and then somebody else scooped him up. There's probably quite a few of those owners who are just sick about that because it's, they're like, man, if I'd had Watson instead of that guy, I might have been in the playoffs instead of that guy.
Well, Justin Fields is the poster child for that. Like everybody dumped him after he looked so terrible, and now, if he comes back and does what he was doing, right before he got hurt, then that could be the move, to have gotten him.
I dropped Rodgers to pick up Fields, and then I added Geno Smith to that team, and now I'm like in heaven with my quarterbacks.
That's awesome.
All right. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yep. Just said that's awesome.
Do you guys have any kind of looking in the future, anyone in mind that you think could still be a winner off the wire? Darren, do you have any guys that you see there that are maybe still out there?
We have to ask him in 8 more minutes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, because of the way the waivers work, I think there was some Odell Beckham. He's some guy you threw in there. He's out there. I don't know if he's available though, because people may have dropped him, and I know I dropped him in a league.
Yeah. Because
is he gonna help you in the sprint? So let's say he gets signed this week. Is he gonna when's he gonna contribute? I think for the team that signs him, it's more like a playoff deal for them. Not so much he's gonna, 17 week 17, 18, he does something for you. We wouldn't even play in week 18, so that's why I dropped him. I needed the roster spot, and I didn't know that he would help me in the fantasy.
Right. We got to get him on a private jet to whatever his team is.
Yeah, so he can't get escorted off by a
PJ season for OBJ. Yeah.
Did we talk Walker? Walker's another guy that I'm sure guys got off the waivers. No, do you think he got dropped?
Ken Walker?
Kenny Walker? No.
Yeah, he was dropped.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, man.
Hashtag not my league.
Right.
It's never in our leagues, Andrew.
Never.
It's always other people's on Twitter's leagues,
Yeah. Well, I and I don't know, Darren, if you're looking that up, but the Watson week 7 kind of reminds me of the 2020, probably around the same time, week 7, week 8. Justin Jefferson and Higgins were dropped in a number of leagues, probably same amount. And it's just it is a double-edged sword, because I think somebody in the chat brought up Jameson Williams, right? Is at what point, right? And obviously the Christian Watson keep versus drop saved a lot of owners. But at what, with these rookie wide receivers, it really is that nut crunch time around week 7, 8, 9. You got to decide, are these guys going to be people who pop, or are they just roster cloggers that are going to sit there the whole year? Now, maybe Jameson was a little more obvious as a potential drop in some of these tournaments. Maybe. It certainly turned out that way, but he could have come back sooner. He could have been a bigger contributor sooner. I think there's room to run in that Lions offense. So it is always an interesting case study with some of these rookie wide receivers as to what the right time to either decide to keep, and clog potentially for a whole season or drop. But anyways, it just reminded me of Justin Jefferson Higgins, who were definitely available in a number of leagues back a couple years ago.
Yeah, and I do think some of that kind of comes down to, it's kind of individual team specific.
Yeah.
I drafted Jameson in a few places, and I only did it when I really felt like, this team is coming together nicely. I feel like I might be able to, hold a guy for, 10 weeks or so is kind of what I was thinking. It's turned out to be longer than that. There are a couple of those teams where, injuries started hitting and everything else, and I was like, I got to make the playoffs. I can't sit there and hold on to this guy for when I make the playoffs if I don't make the playoffs. So, I just got to drop him. There are other leagues. I got a couple leagues that are going to advance, and, I've still got him sitting on my bench. I've just never really needed that last bench spot. So I've left him there because I think, he will make for a pretty, a more unique team in the, the final sprint. Any thoughts on that, Darren?
It comes down to, you need the spot. Like, you can't just hold them forever. Like, so there's going to be tons of those guys. Like Jaylen Warren's another one. Like, we waited all year. Najee never got hurt, and then finally people probably dropped him. And then, sure enough, he's probably going to start this week. So it's the recycle bin. Like, at some point, guys go in, and then like somebody else is going to pick them up. But that's where you say the process was right, because I knew this guy was going to hit. But how many handcuffs can you hold?
Well, I was going to say, I think you're holding, let's face it, we got 20 guys in most of these FFPC teams. So you can't have all your depth pieces the same type of player. So maybe you take a shot at one rookie, at receiver that you hope that, maybe he's not playing now, but he's going to kick in later, help you out. So you got to complement that with some pieces that can help you now during the bye weeks and that kind of thing. So you can't just have, home run swings on your bench when you're so shallow. It's not like we're talking 25, 30 deep rosters here. So I think that's also an important factor. Darren, do you have a hard out at 10? I didn't even ask you before we came on.
Well, I guess we'll find out.
We'll make it quick. I really want to talk best ball because we love talking best ball here. Yeah. We've got ball in that we do in the off season. We draft all kinds of live best balls. I know we all degened into the best ball tournament, so maybe we can go through quickly. Talk to us about the best ball tournaments. What the win rates. What are you seeing right now with the data?
Well, nobody's won. Because they're still going on.
Or the winning rates, I guess.
But if I go to the leaderboards, so I did notice, like in the Superflex best ball, it was like a team that kind of faded the quarterbacks till later rounds. That was number one overall there. When I looked at the normal best ball, like I said, that seems to be heavily skewed towards guys who took Travis Kelce in the first round. But I haven't really dove too close into those. It's just interesting. Like I'd say, to get people should go to the website. It's not behind a paywall or anything. Just go to Best Ball Tournament leaderboards, and you can look at any of the leaderboards there. And I'm looking at one, and I see like there's Cocktails and Dreams up there, and there's a Goats. I don't know if that was you guys. But it's interesting. That stuff we got to kind of wait and see how it pans out. But right now, it seems like it's heavily skewed towards Travis Kelce teams that are just sort of running away with the leagues at this point.
So let's maybe wrap this up with this. We've looked at this data. We've talked about a lot of different data that Darren's brought to the table. Is there anything that stands out? And maybe we've already touched on it. I know we talked earlier, kind of what we did last year versus this year, but is there one thing that stands out? And maybe we start with you, Darren, that we can change going into 2023 based on what we discussed tonight?
I just say, try and diversify. Everybody's different. Like, so if you're a guy who like does fading, or if you like go overweight on certain players, well, that's a lottery mentality. Maybe that'll work for you. Maybe like you totally crush it one year, and and then another 3 years it doesn't work out so well. But then maybe you win the overall by doing that. And maybe that's what those guys are thinking. So it's tough for me to say, like, don't do that. I'm more like just diversified, take the value, and that seems to have worked out for me.
Darren.
Don't blame anybody else for your mistakes. That's the moral of the story.
Yeah, I like we're all grown men, man. We're all grown men playing this obsessive game. So you got to take responsibility for yourself, man. Dan, what are your thoughts? Is there anything that stands out? Something you're going to do different? I know you talked about changing up the roster builds. Is that kind of the one thing, or do you have something else?
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. I mean, like I say, I think I made steps towards that this year, and I want to push that a little bit further next year and be very intentional about that. Like this year, I probably didn't check my exposures often enough during the season, and I need to stay a little bit more on top of those, just so I can kind of realize, okay, I need to where I need to change up. What am I missing? What players am I just really low on that I need to get more of? Because sometimes recency bias hits, and you draft a player 2-3 times in a couple weeks, and you feel like you got a lot of them, and it turns out you really don't. So just kind of being a little bit more on top of that is one thing that I want to do. But the other thing is just keeping an open mind. Darren posted a couple of teams that we all kind of laughed at on Twitter this summer, that were like extremely heavy on one of them was extremely heavy on running backs and tight ends. I think there was two wide receivers on the entire team, something like that.
That guy, I called him the human anti-pattern. He's like consistently drafted 2 wide receivers, and he's got 7 of them in the sprint already.
It was Goddard and Alec Pierce. Is that the 2 wide receivers? It was epic, 2 names.
It was always bad guys, but his whole premise is I'm gonna just pick up wide receivers during the season, and I think he did 49 teams because I love this guy. Like, he doesn't give a shit what anybody says. He drafted 49 teams. 7 of them were already in the sprint. Maybe he gets in a few more through league playoffs. But you just, he's got
better than expected.
It's Andrew's evil twin. Instead of staying at La Quinta, he's at the Holiday Express.
Yeah,
that's exactly
drafting those 49 rosters. Andrew, anything to add?
Bizarro Andrew is what it is.
Are you still pissing yellow next year, Andrew? Are you changing anything? Hunter Henry in the 10th, or what are we talking here?
I think I'm not going to change much until further notice. Okay. I loved a lot of my process, and maybe I get absolutely blasted again next year. Maybe what I need to do is change some of the people I co-own with and make sure that they've got opposite philosophies of me, because Dan and I are for as much as we have jokes, I think Dan and I are more aligned than not on some of the player strategies. So. Maybe what I need to do is actually get somebody who's going to force me to do different things other than my natural operating state.
I think Darren, what he's angling for is the name of that guy.
Yeah. Can you see that? Slide into my DMs. By the way, the Hunter Henry thing, he helps nobody. Darren,
he went off this weekend. What are you talking about?
He went off with one real touchdown and 1 called back touchdown. And Darren, where was he started? Can we get where he was started? Maybe we tweet that out later or something. He didn't help us.
I'll dig that one up.
He didn't help anybody.
I dropped him in a few leagues. Yeah. In many leagues, I dropped Hunter Henry. Now
Hunter Henry. I wasn't broken up about his performance on Thursday night at all.
Yeah. I do have a hot tip for you.
Oh yeah.
Pound the drafts during draftathon. Those leagues are soft as hell. I do. Ooh, I like when I do my waivers. It's like the early leagues. It's like I can't get anything in them. And then I do the leagues, the waivers for the leagues that were at Draftathon. Oh man, it's so like everything's
what's Draftathon?
Draftathon is like
Labor Day weekend.
The end of Labor Day weekend.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's a good question. People don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But like Labor Day weekend, FFPC basically does drafts like almost around the clock.
That's right.
And they spike. They're running like 70 drafts a day. And you get like every jamoke is in there, and these teams. I mean, it's easy.
Save your rubles some rubles for that weekend is right. What we're saying.
Like you want to draft over the entire draft season, but if you're gonna like really go heavy in draftathon, because that's when, you'll have success.
And that's a good point. And to piggyback on that, because the other reason behind it, not only do you get all the jamokes in there, but all the high stakes pros have switched over to the main event.
Yes.
So they're all concentrated on getting their main events.
Very true.
In. So
hey, listen, this is the Go District secret. Don't tell anybody else this.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
This is for the listeners.
All right, guys, this has been a blast. Darren, we love having you on. Remind the people, the site, your Twitter handle, any goodness you want to add to that before we close this out.
All right. At Fantasy Mojo is the Twitter handle, fantasymojo.com. I'll have some of the stuff we talked about. I'll make it available right after this. The stack finder for the championship rounds. I'll update those as every week because the teams are ranked in there as well. So you can say, let me see AJ Brown, how many teams, but then it'll also show you where those teams are ranked. So you'll see like, oh, they're all at the top. So that's helpful. The ownership. But draft season is like really like the money time for that. We've got the ADP and the draft boards updated every day. There's no off season for me. I just every day I'm like keeping the site up and running. So don't forget about us. But anything FFPC, like if you're doing FFPC and you don't have a subscription, I don't know.
You're at a disadvantage. You're already behind the eight ball. You're probably the rake. Harry Snowman, his name is Darren. It's in his profile, Darren Armani.
Yeah, just go hit my Twitter profile. I keep on the down low.
Yeah, guys, it's a no-brainer. It's great info. We talked about a lot of it tonight. If you're listening to this podcast, make sure you check out on YouTube. You'll see a lot of the spreadsheets that we went through tonight. You get to see Dan's flow. Shelly, not necessarily at the La Quinta tonight, but he's in the west wing of the castle. But we appreciate him hanging out with us tonight with his appearance. Guys, anything to add, Dan or Andrew, before we close it out? Going into week 13, getting into the money weeks. All right. Good luck, everyone.
Go Penn State.
Next,
I hope they make the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
I hope Rose Bowl pulls a fast one on everyone.
Guys, next week we have two monsters. We have on Monday tailgate Pat Carrain coming in, speaking of pissing yellow. And then we've got on Tuesday Brad Stadler joining us. And we'll have Theo back. He's out there crushing us on the waiver wires tonight. Get to those waiver wires, guy. Oh, it's over. The waiver wire is over. So
you should have added David Bell.
Yes,
should have added David Bell. Guys, thanks for hanging with us tonight, and we'll check you all later.
Go district, the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text. That trash offer's the best. You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
1912, we'll totally get Tommy back. All right, guys, we'll check you later.